We're pleased to welcome now Tessa Anderson, forensic interviewer with Sally Kate Winters Family Services. Tessa, thanks for coming on.
Of course.
All right, so tell us exactly what you do as a forensic interviewer. What does that entail?
So when children get, when a crime gets reported, the next step usually is talking with the kids, and we do it here in a safe place so that way they don't have to go to a police station. We have to be specially trained so that way the interview can be admissible in court. Here at Sally Kate, we are actually cross-trained between victims advocate and forensic interviewer because it can be exhausting. Doing 3 or 4 interviews a day, 4 days a week, year-round can be extremely exhausting and a lot of burnout. So,
what would be the age range of a child that you would interview?
Depending on their mental capacity, 3 or 4 years to 17 years of age.
It's got to be difficult to interview someone that young.
It can, and sometimes they are very verbal and can speak, and sometimes you just get a kid running around, and at that point you just have to kind of say, well, we tried, and then move on.
Critical, I assume, to the justice process, the legal process?
Yes, and there's a huge misconception that I hear parents say when I'm doing the victims advocacy part that that if they do a forensic interview, then the child doesn't have to testify in court, and I have to explain to them that they do. They still do. I don't know where you're getting that information, but hopefully the truth can come out that the accused still has the right to face his accuser, and that includes children as well, but the courts try to make it as comfortable as possible for the child. But the video itself of the forensic interview can be a huge step in evidence for getting more of a plea deal rather than going to court. So if they know that there's a video, then it can help them make plea deals. But it can definitely help when the child goes to court to show, because it can take years to go to court. So having that video right after the incident can help the child. The jury see the child at the time, hear the child's words. That can be very impactful. And yeah.
Are you also charged with the responsibility of preparing a child if they do have to testify in court? You don't get a plea deal?
As a victim's advocate, yeah, that can be part of your job. Usually the district attorneys will have victims advocates there, and they will work with the families and children to help them with court. But if they are here and they have questions, we do have information. We do sit down and talk with them and kind of explain the process after the interview, depending on what the MDT team decides, whether to close out the case because there wasn't a disclosure, or what more of investigation from police side or social worker side.
Do you ever have situations when you're conducting a forensic interview where it really does touch you emotionally and maybe can make the job a little more difficult or stay with you, linger with you?
Yeah, I'm still a baby interviewer. I've recently just started doing it. But I have sat in on interviews, and I've watched and I've read the reports, and there are some that it still sticks with you, just the horrendous things that happened, the fact that the child was able to sit there and actually disclose to someone, basically a stranger, and that's why we try to make it as comfortable as possible for the child to be there, to make sure that the child feels safe, because we do not want to re-traumatize. Usually the motto is child first, so we make sure that the child's safety and well-being comes first. But yeah, there are still some where I can still think about, and hopefully they're doing okay and they got the help they need, and that's where.
Do you come across situations where a caretaker or a family member perhaps has concerns about allowing the child, just objects to being interviewed?
Yeah, I've had a couple of instances where the family is informed that they are able to sit in the interview for some reason they think it's like being interrogated at a police station where they can sit there and the parent has to be there. No, we don't. We don't allow anybody in there but the child and the forensic interviewer. And I've had parents say, wait, what? No, I want to go back there. And they start up a little fuss, and that's where the victim's advocate has to kind of calm the parent down and explain to them that it's for the safety of the child and the integrity of the interview.
Gotcha. Do you have situations, I guess, that would be difficult to the point where the child just refuses and won't cooperate? Or do you have a way to perhaps try to work around that, maybe motivate and induce them, because it's critical, perhaps what they reveal and what they disclose is critical to prosecuting the case?
Yeah, so a forensic interviewer has to be trained a specific way. We have to make sure that we're not doing leading questions. We have to make sure that we're not asking direct questions that or introducing evidence of any sort. It has to be completely neutral on that. So if a child doesn't disclose, it's okay. We're given the safe opportunity to do so, and if they don't, that's okay. It doesn't mean that the interview failed. But if, for instance, you can see that they're wanting to disclose but they're scared, so you kind of rearrange your questions. Maybe instead of asking a specific, maybe back up a little and ask about something else and then come back to it in a different form to where they maybe feel a little bit safer to disclose a specific, not a whole. And then you kind of work your way towards the full disclosure.
Do you have to kind of start with building trust and a rapport with the child before? I mean, you just don't sit down and start launching into difficult questions.
It's not an interrogation. And yeah, there's a specific protocol for forensic interviewers. And the first thing we do is, the victim's advocate kind of gets the child, a little warmed up to the place. And then when they come back with us, we do build a rapport and ask things that are not at all relevant to the case, so the child can open up a little bit. But it's also to kind of test how they are, and how they can, disclose details, how they can, manage time, and things like that. So that way we kind of know how we word the question, so that way they can understand.
If you have a situation where the child is needed to testify in court, would you have situations where you would recommend perhaps to the DA that the child really shouldn't be required to do that it might cause problems, might harm the child?
Well, yeah, the DA would be in contact with us, and that's what MDT meetings are for, is the police, social workers, victims advocate, forensic interview, the DA's office, and anybody else needed, and we will all talk about it. And if it does go to court, then the prosecutor, they have to make sure that they make the correct accommodations for the child. If they get special circumstances, maybe they don't have to go directly. But that's for the prosecutor to determine.
So after you've done the interview and then the child perhaps does testify in court, the case is over, is there still work for you to do after that? Yeah.
What I like about ours is that we do follow-up calls, so that way we make sure, because sometimes families get lost in the system. They get lost, and that's just the reality of it. So we do follow-up calls every couple of months, just to make sure, hey, is anybody in contact? Do you have any questions? What can we do? Maybe you didn't have services. You didn't need them back then. Do you need any now? Just to double check that they're getting everything they need.
Yeah, or just check in on the overall health of the child at that point. I'm sure that could be possibly traumatizing for them to have to relive that.
And that's why we make sure that they have the counseling and the therapy if they want it. That we make the referrals for them, or we send them a bunch of different places that would fit their insurance or whatever they have, to make sure that they have access to it.
Where do you typically conduct the interviews?
Here at Sally Kate.
Is that pretty much always a requirement?
Yeah.
Or, okay.
Yeah, we have to have a specific type of room. We need the recording to make sure that, it's done properly and it can go to court if needed.
Yeah. How many others do what you do here?
There are 3 of us so far. And so if, we will trade off. And of course, I'm just getting introduced into it. So they're slowly putting me into more not so difficult cases, because we get things from child pornography, we get to physical abuse, sexual abuse. So AI is actually becoming a thing that we're seeing more and more, and we don't really know how to fully handle that. That's going to be an issue in the future. And all those other things. We have every sort of case.
Gotcha. Tessa Anderson, forensic interviewer at Sally Kate Winters Family Services, has been our guest. Thanks for coming on, Tessa.
Of course, thank
Appreciate
you.
it. Folks, we're stepping aside for a break right now. Once again, we're in West Point, Mississippi at Sally Kate Winters Family Services. We're coming right back. Stay with us.